And the doctors come into me and said, Nick, your heart failure numbers have doubled in the last 2 weeks. We know that you got a big tournament coming up, first one of the year. You won't make it. You're going to die.
And this is Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, David Rives. I'm joined in studio today with Nick Harp, a good friend who is a pro archer. He has an incredible story. We've had him on the program before, but I tell you, it's just always great to get an update from Nick. So welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, David. It's great to be back.
It is good to have you back. You've been on the road all day.
Yeah, so we had church service this morning and a little birthday lunch with my dad, and then 9 hours later we're here. So it's about midnight your time. So.
Yep, we are now currently filming this at about 5 till midnight. Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of a long day, but
it's been a long day for me as well.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you're here. Lots happened since last time we had you on the program.
You know, it's been a wild ride this past year.
Yeah.
So you know, the archery was taking off. God is blessing us in so many ways with the ministry. In January, we got blessed with a motorhome that we've been praying for 5 years. So
you've been talking to me about this for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And you're like, it sure would be helpful if we had some type of a motorhome. We're spending so much on hotels. We're not able to be as effective in ministry as we could be. And to just take that off of our plate would be so great. Someday.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
that day happened.
Okay.
So I was having coffee at one of my favorite little coffee shops. I stop in, it's a little Amish cafe, and I stop in there and I run into this pastor that had just retired. We're friends on Facebook, met each other in person a couple times, and I just went up to congratulate him on his retirement after 40 years in ministry, and he goes, well, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm just having a cup of coffee. He goes, well, we're getting ready to have a Bible study. He goes, would you join us? I said, oh, I'd love to. You know, so we sat for a couple hours and I started sharing about our ministry. And he goes, with all that traveling, he goes, you got a camper or an RV or something? I said, no, we just kind of live out of a suitcase in hotel rooms, you know. He goes, ain't that a little tough on the family? I said, yeah, a little bit, you know, but we make it work. And I left it at that. Well, 2 weeks later, he calls me up and says, hey, do you got a moment to talk? I said, yeah, sure. And he goes, after we met the other day, he goes, I got to tell you a little backstory. He goes, a year ago, my wife and I knew that we were going to retire and we wanted to start traveling. So we asked all our friends about where's the best place to buy an RV. Everyone said Florida. So we flew down to Tampa, Florida and bought this RV. Drove it back to Michigan. He goes, wow. A week later, my wife finds one that she likes a little bit better that has a couple other amenities to it. And she goes, what about an upgrade? And he goes, well, we hadn't even went anywhere in the first one yet. And, but she talked him into it. And so he goes, no, I got a problem. He goes, I got 2 RVs sitting in my driveway.
Whoa.
And he goes, well, that being said, he goes, after we met, he goes, God spoke to me that we were to donate that other RV to you.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, whoa. And he goes, is that something that you think you could use for your ministry?
Yeah.
I said, have you read one of our newsletters? and he goes, no. And I said, well, let me send this over to you. And I'm on the phone. I sent him a copy. I said, read the last page under prayer request. It says Class A diesel pusher, you know, large enough to fit our family.
Yeah.
I said, do you mind if I ask you what kind it is? And he goes, well, it's a 36-foot Class A diesel pusher. I'm like, and he goes, isn't God good?
Yeah.
I said, yes, all the time.
Wow.
And so, you know, God laid on my heart early on this year that it was going to be a big year for ministry and a lot of big things were going to happen. But with big things happening, big trials can come along the way.
That's so true.
And so last year, and I'm getting ready to compete at the ASA Classic and the IBO World's coming up. You know, that's what I'm on the road for right now. And last year I was at the IBO Worlds in August. And I was shooting and I was doing very, very well.
Okay.
I was like, finally, I'm putting everything together. It might be that weekend where we get the big, you know, Happy Gilmore paychecks, you know, the ones that everybody, you know, always dreams of. And I was shooting the best round I had ever. Yeah. until about 2 targets to go on the first day. I had a dizzy spell, and my vision blurred up, and then I shot 2 5s and finished my day dropping 10 points at the end. I'm like, huh. And I struggled to get off the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
I went back to my hotel room, and one of the pro archers I was shooting with went up to my wife and says, "You go check on your husband. He's not good."
Yeah.
And she calls me up. She goes, "What's wrong?" I said, I'm feeling off. And I didn't know what was going on at the time. But I pushed through it like I always do with many things. I went out and shot my round the next day, still feeling off, but I was able to push through it. And I finished my season. Unfortunately, with the dizzy spells, I dropped a few more points and ended up not winning the tournament.
Yeah.
And so I went home and started hunting, and during hunting season, my dad, we almost lost him. He had a heart failure, double bypass that he had. So I was actually in hunting camp when I got the phone call one night and rushed home to meet the ambulance there. And thankfully, he's still with us.
Okay.
But he's had a rough road, a lot of surgeries. And so that kind of took the wind out of my sail during hunting season for a while.
Yeah.
But the Lord still blessed me with a beautiful buck when I was able to get back in the woods. Yeah. And but I started realizing every time I went hunting that my energy level kept fading. And I was still having kind of those dizzy spells, and I knew something was going on.
Right.
But I was also trying to take care of my dad and my mom, and so I kind of ignored those things.
Yeah.
A couple days before Christmas, my wife shoots a beautiful big doe, and I threw it in the back of the truck, and when I did, I had an instant sharp pain in my chest.
Oh no.
And I said, wow. And I fought to get through that, and I pretty much stopped hunting after that. Went out very little, and started feeling pretty rough each day. But I was also still trying to take care of my dad at home, and I was pushing things off. And it was right before Christmas. I said, I don't want to go to the hospital during this time of year and do this to the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
So we fast forward to January. I have my yearly test because, as we've shared in the past, I had a heart failure in 2018.
Yes.
They had to keep an eye on it every year now. They told me then when I lost all my electrical system, Nick, you have an aneurysm. Yeah. And you have a bad valve, and it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when that we will have to replace that.
Which is, I mean, that's always weighing on you. You're like, well, yeah, but hopefully not this year. Hopefully not this year.
And that's where I was like, all right. And I knew with the symptoms I was having, I pushed them up because my yearly test was coming up. I said, I'll just wait until then. And so I went and met with my surgeon. I had my cardiologist did an echo on me, and he said, something doesn't look right. And he goes, I think we need to look deeper into this. And then I met with a surgeon, and they did a CAT scan, and that was result day. I went into his office, and he goes, how you been feeling lately? I said, well, I got moments.
Yeah.
And he goes, Nick, he goes, I'm just going to be blunt with you. He goes, we got to operate.
Oh, no.
He goes, in the last 6 months, your aneurysm has rapidly grown. Your valve has rapidly grown. It's getting ready to break off your heart. Basically, I was a ticking time bomb at that moment.
Right.
And he goes, we got to just get this taken care of. And I said, okay. I said, like, when? And he goes, like, now would be ideal. Wow. I said, not for me.
Yeah, right.
Here we are, January, and I'm a pastor, but I'm also a professional archer.
Yes.
And I said, Doc, I said, my season's just getting ready to start. This is literally where all our income comes in, provides for my family. I said, there's big responsibilities. There's people that need to hear about Jesus.
Yep.
I got big responsibilities of also shooting for these companies that I got to represent. And he goes, well, when does your season end? And I said, middle of August. I said, can we wait till then? And he goes, whew. He goes, it's your call. And he goes, but if we do, or he goes, if your blood pressure rises at all, or you get any chest pains at all, you got to get to the nearest ER, and it's going to be emergency. And
yes.
And he goes, wherever you're at in the country, he goes, it could be bad. I said, all right. I said, well, plan it for mid-August.
Okay.
And I said, but if I have any symptoms, I'll come in sooner. And I left his office, and instantly I was under conviction for saying that. But I was scared.
Well, who would not be? Who wouldn't be? I mean, you're in this situation where you're trying to weigh all of your options, and then you get that kind of a news. What do you do?
Yeah, and so I had to go home and tell the wife.
Yeah.
You know, I said, "Honey," I said, and she kind of knew in my voice, and I said, "It ain't good." I said, "I'm dying all over again," and that was an emotional time. I said, "But we're gonna do this in August. I'll skip hunting season this year." I knew it was gonna be a hard recovery, and she goes, "Are you sure that's the best idea?" And I said, "Well, you know," and she knew our livelihood, and what we are called to do, you know, and so I started praying. I said, "Lord, if you want me to get this done sooner, please give me a big sign."
Yeah.
Like I need a really big one. Because I'm pretty stubborn, you know, and so I just got done speaking at a wild game dinner about a week after that. And I didn't remember what I preached on that night. I was disoriented and just out of it. Thankfully, the message was filmed, and I did a really good job. That's all God. Because, you know, and I got through it, and everyone knew I was off. And the next day, I checked my blood pressure at home, and it was saying it was really high. And I said, I better go to the ER. Yeah. I said, maybe this machine's off. You know, maybe it's not reading right, you know.
You're always hoping for the best.
Yeah, and so I drove myself to the ER. I said, I'll be back later. Yeah. And Amanda knew I probably wasn't going to come back that night, but I said, I'll be back. And I went to there, and my machine was off at home. Okay. It was off by like 50 points. Okay. Unfortunately, it was way worse when I got to the hospital than what the machine at home was saying. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. And so... they started doing blood work.
Yeah, this is like emergency mode right here.
And the doctors come into me and said, Nick, your heart failure numbers have doubled in the last 2 weeks. You're not going to Alabama next week. We know that you got a big tournament coming up, first one of the year. You won't make it. You're going to die. And I said, all right. That's the sign I needed. Yeah. So I got a hold of the surgeon. I said, let's get this scheduled. Well, then I had to wait 5 weeks because they wanted to run all these other tests and heart caths and everything, you know, prior. They wanted to make sure they were going to open me up once and get everything done. Right.
And not have to go in multiple times. Yep. Okay.
And so I had to miss the first 3 tournaments of the ASA season. The first 2 I wasn't at all. The third one I was able to go and preach at. Yeah. But it was pretty serious. So... the surgery was 4 months ago today. Wow. It was March 30th. Okay. I went in, and basically they had to rebuild me. They had to rewrap my aortic root. Yeah. They had to clamp off the aneurysm. They had to remove my aortic valve and put in a mechanical valve, and then remove part of my heart as they did that. A very, very major surgery. Yes. And they told me, Nick, you're going to be 3 days in the ICU. You're going to be 14 days in the hospital, 10 to 14 days. Yeah. And it's going to be 3 months before you even think about picking up a bow. Right.
This was 4 months ago.
This was 4 months ago.
I mean, this is serious surgery. This is something that you don't just typically just rebound from.
No. And I said, all right. And so I kind of knew the season was going to be a loss. Yeah. I wasn't going to be able to even, maybe during deer season, I might be able to draw back a bow again type deal. And I said, all right, Lord, you got bigger plans through this. I battled a little bit of depression. I was fighting that because of, you know, I'm thinking, am I going to make it through surgery? You know, I mean, there's so many things wandering in your mind at that moment. Yeah. And it wasn't until about a day before surgery that I was really struggling. I couldn't sleep at night. I was having pains nonstop. They wouldn't go away. My blood pressure, they couldn't bring it down at all. They had me on the highest dose of medication you could be on, and it still wouldn't come down.
Still wouldn't do the job.
Yep. And I finally remembered something that an old pastor told me when he was battling cancer. he had a friend come up and said, well, did you thank God for the cancer? And he goes, thank him for the cancer. He goes, yeah, we're to praise the Lord in all things. And I remember him saying those words to me when he was dealing with that. And that's when he did that, he was freed from the anxiety and depression that he was battling. And it just hit me. I'm like, I never thanked the Lord for my bad heart.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't create junk. He did, this was done there's a purpose for it.
Yes.
And so I got down on my knees in that new motorhome of ours, because I had that as my quiet area to go to each day.
Uh-huh.
And I said, Lord, thank you for this heart. I said, through this, the testimony that you've given me to share with others,
that's right,
has led so many people to you. I said, and going through this, if it leads just one, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I prayed, and I was at a peace that I never had before. It was so awesome. And so the next day, they're wheeling me in for surgery early morning, and I had this big smile on my face. I was happy. I was like, I knew God had it.
Yeah.
And so I give my wife a kiss, and I said, honey, I'll see you in a little while. And she seen me smile, and that gave her reassurance.
Right.
And so she was at peace. And the surgery went from, it was supposed to be about a 12-hour surgery. About 6 hours later, they were done. Got done in half the time. The surgeon said everything went super smooth. He came out and told my wife it was good, and everything that they had to do, but everything went really smooth. I woke up. And I woke up too soon. There's some trials through that.
Okay.
I woke up with a breathing tube still in, and
oh no,
and had to experience that some misery.
Yeah.
That night the pain was more than I've ever felt before. But I knew I could fight it. I knew God was going to give me the strength. And the next morning, they said, Nick, do you think you can stand? And I was in a lot of pain all night. I said, yeah. And I did a lot of praying that night. Right. I said, Lord, just help me to be able to handle this. I didn't even ask him necessarily to take it away, but just give me the strength to handle it.
Yes.
And so they said, can you stand up? I said, yeah, I think so. And I stood up. The moment I stood up, all that pain just left.
Really?
It was so amazing. It went away. I'm like, wow. And I was shocked on how well I felt. And they said, do you think you can walk a few steps?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And they said, oh, how far do you think you can walk? I said, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to see if I could make it 10 steps. So I started walking. I said, come on. And I walked the whole entire block around all the nurses' station in the hallway and all the way back. I said, well, let's keep walking. They're like, are you unassisted?
Yes.
The nurses come in. They're like, you don't need a walker. You don't need a cane. I was just up walking.
You just got out of heart surgery.
Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, and I felt good. And I said, I'm healed. Yeah. I just knew instantly I was healed.
Yeah. And
that night, they're like, Nick, we're moving you to the heart wing. You're too good for ICU. So less than a day, I was supposed to be 3 days.
Yes.
I went to ICU, from ICU to the heart wing. And all these nurses started coming in to my room. They said, we got to see you. I said, what's? And they said, we heard rumors about you. I said, oh, yeah? And they said, yeah, a heart patient that's self-sufficient, that you can get up on your own and do all these things. I said, yeah, I can. They said, this is crazy. This is insane. I said, no, this is God.
Wow.
I said, see, I serve a big God. I said, he loves me so much, and he loves you that much too. Yeah. And he's the one that's given me the strength. He's the one that's healed my body. And every doctor, surgeon, nurse got to hear about Jesus.
That's right.
And I started realizing, there's people on the archery circuit that need to hear about our Lord.
Yes.
But there's people in the hospitals that need to hear it. And so sometimes we got to go through those trials to share with who God needs to hear it at that moment.
Yeah.
And he could have used other people, but he chose to use me and allowed me to be blessed by being used. And so 5 days later, after surgery, they let me go home from the hospital. I was supposed to be in there over
5 days.
Yeah, over 2 weeks I was supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
5 days they shipped me home. I said, can I do anything? They said, you can walk. I said, okay. So, I couldn't lift anything. I knew I was on some restrictions.
Sure.
The surgeon comes in and goes, you're doing awesome, Nick. He goes, this is a miracle.
Yeah.
Don't touch that bow for at least 3 months. I said, whatever you say, Doc, I'll listen. Now, they did double reinforce me. So they not only wire meshed my chest back together, but they put titanium plates on me as well.
Okay.
So because they knew I wanted to get back at it as soon as I could.
Right.
So first day home from the hospital, I said, let's go for a walk. I'm feeling good. I'm healed. And I walk 5 miles that day before the visiting nurse comes in to see me. And she comes in. She arrives, and I go answer the door, and she goes, are you Nick? I said, yeah. She goes, you just had surgery when? I said, Thursday. Yeah. And she goes, like, 5 days ago Thursday? I said, yeah. She goes, you don't need a cane? I said, no. I said, I'm healed. And so we sit down and we're talking, and she goes, I think you're ready for cardiac rehab.
Wow.
And I said, that's awesome. I said, what will they do? And they said, well, they'll get you up walking and things. I said, like, walking how much? And she goes, probably 10 minutes at first, and then we'll build. I said, I did 5 miles this morning, you know? And she goes, you did what? And I said, well, they told me I could walk.
Yeah.
And she goes, you don't need cardiac rehab.
Wow.
She goes, I'm signing off on you right now.
Wow.
And it was just, God kept blessing me over and over and over with how quick I was recovering from it all.
Yeah.
5 weeks later, the surgeon goes, Nick, go back to shooting. Really? I'm not going to hold you back anymore. He goes, you were just an absolute miracle.
5 weeks after your chest was cut open.
Yes.
You are pulling a bow again.
Yes.
Whoa. That's the Lord right there.
Absolutely. So 5 weeks later, I go and compete at the first leg of the IBO Triple Crown.
Okay.
I podiumed second place in the National Field Tournament. Part of that. I finished the 3D side of it, which is a lot harder.
Yes.
And climbing up and down the hills and everything, pushing through it. And everyone's just like, Nick, we can't believe you're out here. Like, this is insane. I said, this is God.
Yeah.
And then I took second place in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. And I've been getting the 3D side better on my judging, you know, and I haven't been able to work as hard as I should be working.
Sure.
You know, but I've been getting out enough. And this weekend, we hosted our 4th annual God's Country Outdoor Ministries bullseye archery benefit shoot that we do. That's become a pretty big deal in Michigan.
Yeah.
We had people come from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, you know, they're kind of starting to come from all over to this shoot. We made these awesome gold belt buckles up last year.
Okay.
That was kind of the new thing that we wanted to do, is like have a really awesome prize for the first place finisher.
Yeah.
Well, this is my shoot, technically, we run, and I made all these buckles up, and of course they cost a good amount of money. I said, I almost wanted to make one for myself, you know, because I was like, I want one of these.
I want one of these as a souvenir.
But you got to earn it, you know.
Right.
I said, that's what we did it for.
Right. And
so I had some of the top pros in the industry show up this weekend. Mm-hmm. We had a great turnout, and the Lord blessed me this weekend.
You walked in with something just a few moments ago in the studio.
I did. I
don't know if the camera can make this out. It says, God's Country Outdoor Ministries Archery Championship. Who is this for?
That was for me. I went in with a huge lead into the shoot down this weekend.
Wow.
And it was just absolutely amazing. I couldn't miss. And then in the shoot down, it was 12. I stayed on the gas and just walked away with it.
This is just a few months.
Yeah.
And the Lord has brought you back. And you are headed to Coleman, Alabama.
Yes.
To a big shoot.
The biggest one of the year, the ASA Classic.
Wow.
And so winning this kind of gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
That maybe we can do it in the World Championship.
That's right.
Stage. You know, I serve a big God.
Yes. And he can do over and above anything that you can imagine. Absolutely. I mean, I think about that. I last time I saw you was about a year ago.
Yeah.
And here we are sitting in the Wonder Center, doing a podcast together in a building that, if you'd have told me a year and a half ago even existed, I didn't even know it existed, right? Much less that we were going to have this as a ministry center and be able to use it to really tell people not only about God's creation, but also the gospel message itself, and to have people like you come in and share your story. You know, I wouldn't have believed it, and yet God has a plan through it all.
Absolutely. That's how big of a God we serve.
Yes.
It's been, like I said, a crazy year, but an amazing year. When God spoke to me in January and told me it was going to be a big year with a lot of big things happening, I did not expect this magnitude of things to happen and this style of things, but through it, oh man, the people that are coming to the Lord, it is just so overwhelming. And like I shared with everybody after I won that buckle, I mean, there's a lot of tears in the crowd, and everybody that come up to me, I had so many pros come up and say, Nick, look at you. Like, you're unstoppable right now. I said, I don't even feel like I'm shooting that good right now. I said, this is God, I said, sometimes it's better to let him shoot the bow for me. Yeah. Not sometimes, all the time.
All the time.
I said, let him lead.
Right.
On the back of every tournament shirt of mine is my favorite verse, Philippians 4:13. Because it's through Christ that he gives us the strength to do these things. And
not of us, or else we would boast.
Yeah.
We can't do anything without him.
Absolutely.
And he is sustaining this world. Even though we live in this sin-cursed world, he holds it all in his hand. And he is working that plan. And he has something very, very special in store for those of us who have put our trust in him.
Absolutely.
Nick, thank you so much for being on the program.
David, it's always a pleasure.
I love you, love your family, just love what you do. And how can we learn more? What's your website?
God'sCountryOutdoorMinistries.org.
Okay.
Yep.
We look forward to keeping up with you as you continue these travels, and I wish you the best of success here over the next few days and the big match coming up.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And thank you for watching Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, David Rives. We would like to change the narrative because we've been spoon-fed this narrative of atheism. We've been spoon-fed a narrative that we are accidents, star stuff, just a part of the cosmos, and yet you are wonderfully made. You have purpose through Christ. And as you see and as you hear these stories, we hope that you're inspired to go out there, share the gospel, get connected, and become a champion for the truth of Christ. We'll see you next time. And until then, keep looking up. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Find us on all social platforms to stay informed. Watch Genesis Science Network 24/7 for free on Roku, Fire TV, and on our website.